Hello and welcome back to the writer's room. Once in a while, I read something that makes me remember why this craft is so important to me, why I love writing. It makes me feel brimming full of the urge to go get to my next writing session, which is really a gift to get that inspired. And I had that experience this week reading what issue of the New Yorker. This was this week's issue one. If you're watching this live when it's coming out, it's the November 29th, 2021 New Yorker. I read the short stories in the New Yorker every week. And because I write a lot of short stories and literary fiction, and that's, this is the best of the best in the world getting published here in the New Yorker. So I like seeing what people are doing, what they're up to, and learning from them. So we each have different things that inspire us. And I'm going to do a little craft teaching from this particular story that really got me going. And you might read it and think it sucks, and you might read it and be left completely cold. And that is the both fun and fascinating component, right, of art. It's so subjective. I happen to geek out when a writer is so good at craft. I don't even almost care what the story is about or the characters. If they are doing masterful craft, I'm all in. I'm excited because I know I learn every time, and it up levels my own work. So I'm saying all of this to say you might think, I'm going to go read that story. And what was Sarah talking about? Like, I didn't like that story at all. And that's okay. What I'm hoping that this writer's room does is inspires you to find something that jazzes you up, that lights your fire, that acts as a bellows breath on your current project. And to do that, we get to read. We get to read a lot. So one of my practices, right, is reading the story, subscribing and reading the fiction story in the New Yorker every week. I also read lots of novels, and I read nonfiction, I read memoir. So what are you reading right now that's filling your well? And I never know when something's going to blow my mind and excite me the way that this particular one did, not because of the story's characters or plot, but because of the craft. So I'm going to read a few things from this. Maybe this story will inspire you, and then you can use this as your inspiration. And if not, I want you to find something. I'm calling in for each of us this week that you come across, that the universe puts in your path, something fabulous. Maybe you hear something on a podcast and it reminds you of a book, or you pull a book off your shelf that you know you loved and you can't remember why, but you just loved it, or you fill in the blank. But let's get inspired this week. And I'm going to read from Greg Jackson's story, The Hollow, a couple of moments that I thought were just exquisite. Okay. As a writer, I enjoyed this. The narrator is talking about his, I think they moved, they're not married, Sophie, his ex-partner, who has left him in the country. They were going to start this rural life together and have kids, and they moved to the country out of New York City. And then she decided, I don't think this is what I want. So he's now left in this farmhouse out in the country, and fired from his job, and doesn't know what to do with himself. But he's talking about Sophie, and think about this as sharing a lot about a character in just a few sentences. Sometimes she called herself a journalist, but that wasn't quite right. She wrote nonfiction. She had a degree in it, but she picked up magazine assignments infrequently and had trouble finishing pieces. Some fire was missing in her. She'd be the first to admit. She bit off more than she could chew and spent months diving deeply into projects, then found herself paralyzed, unable to write a word. Jack had long ago stopped giving her advice. Well, I love this, right? We can feel tension in Sophie, the frustration of having this urge to write and not being a plus. As a writer, I find comfort in knowing other people don't have the easiest time. Now look over here. This is now he's introducing, that's character. If we say what element of craft is happening here, that was character. Now let's look at setting, okay? The house was in Trevi, a small hamlet upriver from the city, out past the suburbs, picturesque and quaint, if not quite as grand as its European name, with Bradford pear trees all along the main street, which in spring so filled the roadway and the air with petals it resembled a snow scene. Just that alone would have made this story worth it for me. I mean, think about what we get. The small house was in Trevi, a small hamlet upriver from the city, out past the suburbs. So we understand geography, distance. It's not even a suburb. It's further than a suburb. It's a hamlet. And then we have this Italian sort of nod, to something grand, the Trevi Fountain, right? But then we get the details. He doesn't say lined with trees. He says Bradford pear trees. Remember, whenever possible, being specific. Which in spring, and then this is the detail that I think makes this whole scene. The pear trees, which in spring so filled the roadway with and the air with petals that it resembled a snow scene. So now we have this snow globe effect. I'm shaking because like the snow globe, right? And so think about, isn't that wonderful? I know you may or may not think it's wonderful. I think it's exquisite. I'm getting the sense of the quaintness, the picturesqueness, but also maybe the claustrophobia or the unrealness at the same time of the pear trees and the floating petals. And it's so beautiful, but we also have this tension and a breakup and a loss of a job and all this distress, that's this instability in life. So setting up this juxtaposition of idyllic, more rural life with all this real world tensions and life things. So read The Hollow if that excites you. If you want to see some great literary writing craft, find something else that doesn't interest you, but really call in this week. Let's just take a breath together and know that something delicious is going to cross your path. A book, an audiobook, a short story, a poem, an essay, a paragraph, a word. It's going to fill your well this week. I'll see you next time.